Welcome to Mainstream with Harpreet Singh Toor. आप सबनों प्यार भरी सत श्री अकाल, नमस्कार, आदाब and shalom. The benefits of doing the show once a week is that you have to do it only once a week. But the drawback is because the things are happening so rapidly throughout the world, especially with the President Trump here, and we have Prime Minister Modi in India, and wildfires going around in all of Europe. Then we have Putin in Russia. That war is still going on. Then, we have Yemen. We have Iran. I can go on and on and on. But the thing is that to crunch in such a short time for, try to make some sense out of what is happening is not easy to do, but I still try to bring as much as possible to keep everybody up to date on, what's going on. At least some of it, if not all of it. So we are already in August. Today is August 11th. In next 4 days, India will be celebrating Independence Day. And the interesting thing is going to be what is going to be announced from the Red Fort this time, even though there are some things which are being, like they say, they are throwing the air balloons to test some of the rhetorics which can be used and which should be used. And I'm definite that the Prime Minister will definitely talk about the youth, because he always, which I also thought to some point, that he's more connected with the young youth than any previous Prime Minister in India. But this, Cockroach Janata Party thing which happened, it has actually taken us into a new territory, if I may say. And that is something which I'm going to talk about. Then we have over here, the President Trump, when he went for this NATO meet, he had to actually shift the plane from one plane to another plane, and they had to, I'm still trying to dig out the information how they hid him from being transferred from this jumbo which he got from the Qatar and converted into Air Force One to the actual Air Force One, which was sort of like retired. And in the meantime, he also, I'm getting the information, I don't know how much it is true yet, but it is still in the preliminary stage where he had to actually travel in a container from one to another, and he may also have to travel in one of those fighter planes from, but yes, he flew in from UK to United States in the new aircraft donated by the Qatar Air Force One. But in the meantime, but he also had to use the old Air Force One, which actually is capable of so many things. Just imagine after 9/11, President Bush traveled in that plane for hours because they were not sure what's going on, what is happening, and while they assess the ground realities and make him land. And President Trump was a target for Iran, which again is something which we'll talk. And then we have here our Mayor Zoran Mamdani. The court yesterday, one of the judges came down with his new tax on 5 million plus properties, which is the second property of any owner, to come up with the extra tax on it. That has been put on hold. And also we have our favorite President Donald Trump, who has rewritten the rules of the vaccination, even though he grew up with those vaccinations and he is in the state of mind and state of health because of those vaccinations. But when somebody is determined to destroy whatever is there in the form and the shape it is, then you can expect anything. And also with that, we also have Mr. Blanche as confirmed as Attorney General. He was his personal attorney. From there, he became acting Attorney General, and now he's Attorney General, which means he's head of Department of Justice. Even though with the acting Attorney General he was, but now he has more, authority to rubber stamp whatever that the administration wants him to do or say. So, in other words, sometimes I feel like what are the appropriate words to look for, which will make some sense diplomatically. But then again, if you start looking for those words to make sense diplomatically, then a lot of people probably will not even understand what does that mean in underlying those words. So I'm going to be as much straightforward as much I can. And also, again, I have to thank some of the publications which I read: New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Foreign Affairs, Foreign Policy, Financial Times, BBC, Indian Express, The Hindu, The Tribune, Frontline, etc., etc., etc. And I do try to watch Hindi channels. Excuse me, I have this throat issue. Sorry for that. And I do have some, try to watch Hindi channels for the news. But I'm sorry to say, I really don't find any news there. What I find is all these fights about the anchor trying to aggravate the guest and guests trying to aggravate each other, and collectively they are just falling into the trap which the anchor wants them to without answering any questions. The news media is supposed to have the questions, and those questions should be addressed properly, appropriately, and let the person who you are questioning decide whether to answer or not to answer. But you should be asking the right question and expecting some of the things which may not be comfortable in the question or the person who is answering the questions. But that for a journalist, that should not be the criteria that the question which I am going to ask is going to make the other person uncomfortable. And that reminds me of an interview which Mr. Thapa did with the current Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi. I think it was in 2007 or maybe around that time, where the Prime Minister Modi decided to walk out of that interview, stating that drinking the water and stating that let's stay friends. And after that, he never reached out and for the interview, and even though the interviews were asked, he never gave it. And the other person who I came across, who I also respect a lot, is one of the former journalists who I think he used to be with NDTV at one point, but he left soon after it was taken over by one of the Indian media company, because he knew that it's going to be, some sort of his way of reporting that the owners will not want him to report that way. So he ended up resigning from there, Mr. Desai. And even though he is known for interviewing the Prime Minister Modi by sitting on the floor of a bus, and I was listening to him, and his take on that was, which was very interesting. He said, listen, he said, for us, the journalists in that part of the world, we are the cockroaches and they are empowered. I'm quoting here his words, okay? And he said, if we want to have some answers, then we should not be looking at what situation we are sitting in or where we are sitting at. It should be that, have you been able to get the interview? Have you been able to get some answers? Which I happen to agree, but at the same time, I also disagree in this context that if you are an eminent journalist of his stature, yeah, they are trying to show you your place, but I think you have a stronger place. You should be showing them their place by, if they do that, then walking out and stating that, okay, I wanted to interview Mr. So-and-so, and this is the treatment which was meted out to me, and decided to not to interview. And I think that will have more impact than what you were trying to do, because you still did not get the answer which you wanted to get the answers. So what is the fun of putting yourself in that situation where even those people who respect you so highly, they will feel uncomfortable about you, not about the person who is answering the question, but about you, because they understand what you are talking about, they understand where you are coming from, and they also understand that you are trying to get to the bottom of the issue. So having said that, I think that is something which I definitely will say that, yeah, that's where I disagree with the, my honorable journalist friend, Mr. Sardesai. And let's take a break. After the break, I will be right back. Welcome back to Mainstream with Harpreet Singh Toor. So let us go over a little bit about what happened at Jantar Mantar and what is happening. We need to understand one thing, okay, which I always try to talk about. I speak here, I talk about it here on the show, I talk to the kids who are growing up, that the freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of what is in your mind to express it is very important. If it is being muzzled one way or the other, then creativity is getting muzzled. And actually, when you are watching me here and I'm communicating with everybody throughout the world, wherever you are watching, it is, the reason is because those people who invented these things, they actually had this thing in their mind that this thing can be done. And why not try this way? Why not try that way? And ultimately they succeeded, and we got inventions. We got, whether we got the airplanes, whether we got the railways, we got rockets, and we see these days, the images right here, the smartphones, I have the iPhone. That's the most easiest phone which I ever had in my life, and I think I will die with that. But anyway, so the question basically is, what happened at Jantar Mantar? What happened after that? Okay, I actually, went through few things, reading about it, and printed. It's about a page and a half. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to go through it. That number one, why the pellet guns were used. And I see this girl on one of the video on social media. She is walking with folded hands and she is saying they fired it. These were the kids, and they were asking right questions. Instead of answering those questions, their questions were being answered first to begin with lathi charge, pellet gun, and I think in Bihar they used even AK-47. Can you imagine that the government actually is trying to muzzle your voice? The TV channels, the news media, the newspaper, the printed news media in India, even here in United States, everything is compromised now. Why? Those people who are in power, they actually control the purse. Because they control the purse, they actually control what is said on their behalf. And nobody actually dares to ask right questions. And these kids who were at Jantar Mantar, who came out, who protested, and who got lathi charge, who got water cannons and tear gas and everything, they actually stood up. And I think during the last, since 2014, since the current Prime Minister's government, BJP, came into power, this is the first time where these young kids have shown that, yes, you can try to muzzle whatever you want to, but we still can come up and say the things and, try to demonstrate and stuff. And when they talk about, all the unparliamentary languages used, for me, the question is, they are using the language which you used against them or your previous elected persons, the language you use against, for example, for Gandhi, you are calling him always Papu instead of calling him Mr. Gandhi at all. You gave the name. And then we also had the current Prime Minister Modi, on the floor of Parliament, mocking the former Prime Minister Narendra Modi, not Narendra Modi, I mean Manmohan Singh, as saying, I'm quoting again the words of current Prime Minister Modi on the floor of Parliament, that only Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, the former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, knows how to take the shower with raincoat on. When you use that kind of language, you use that kind of phrases, it means you actually do not have the right answers, or you do not want to answer the questions, and that's why you are deflecting what needs to be done or what needs to be said. And by denying his funeral at Rajghat, you actually showed how much you really hated him. And also by implementing this agenda of one nation, one religion, one language, you are actually destroying the very fabric of India, which makes India a unique country. It is right now, I will not say that it is on life support, but it definitely is an emergency right now, being taken care of in ICU, intensive care unit, without the life support, if I may say, So those kids who were demonstrating, they using the face recognition technology, now they are being bombarded on social media and otherwise. they are getting arrested or they are getting threatened by finding out where they live, where they belong, and blah, 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 blah. So what you are trying to do? Muzzle not only free expression, free speech, but you are also muzzling that the brain power of these young kids who actually may otherwise, end up inventing something which which may make India even the superpower which you are dreaming. You went to make India a Jagat Guru, but India is being, it's a mockery right now. Believe it or not, when you speak to the people from other countries, they don't want to talk about it. And one of the reasons, of course, they don't want to talk about it is because diplomatically they don't want to say anything which is not respectable, but they don't have anything to say which is more respectable, so they don't say anything. And they walk away without making any comments, and they say no comment. And when they use all these bamboo sticks, batons, tear gas, pellet guns, what to what? And also the Supreme Court is not really helping that much either. So here it is that the Cockroach Janata Party's organizers, they have actually asked everybody to save their videos. Why? Because even though the government said they are not going to take any action, but yes, there are people who are behind the bars, and those people may end up, facing severe charges. One of the things which always bothered me from day one, not with this government, but even the previous government, when originally the TADA was introduced in the parliament and made a law, and now that has been converted into UAPA, where the government can detain anybody for literally indefinite period. There are kids, young kids who are behind the bars for 5 years, 6 years, and some of the kids, they have been arrested. Why? Because they have downloaded the books on their phones or their e-books about Marxism and about some ideological person, some philosopher which the government does not want you to read. But those are available out on the shelf of the market. You can go out and buy the books on those authors, but you cannot download on ebook, because if you download it on ebook, then immediately you are a target, which means what? That whatever you are doing, it is being watched somewhere. And as soon as you reach to that book, you download that book, you actually become a target for getting recognized from the social media, or otherwise from downloading. They have your IP address. From there they know where you are, and boom, you are arrested. And then you get arrested and then put behind the bars. And it's rare, but there have been 1 or 2 chances where ultimately Supreme Court said that no, because you haven't filed any cases against a person, you got to release him, which is very rare. But it had happened previously. But what had happened in current Supreme Court, based on the comments from the current Chief Justice, I don't know. And some of the justices, when they agree with the government to muzzle the freedom of speech, that is not the justice the way it is supposed to work. Let's take a break. After the break, I will be right back. Now, let's go to some of the things which are happening in the Middle East. Benjamin Netanyahu, there is election coming up in Israel, and he is actually expanding Israel. He already took over 70% of Gaza. They want to kick out every Palestinian from there. And in West Bank, it is the settlers are going deeper and deeper into the West Bank, where their priority actually is to push out the Palestinians. Like when the Israel was created in 1948, Palestinians actually left thinking that they will come back, and they were never allowed to come back, and they are trying to repeat the same thing again. But in the meantime, we have this Iran and U.S. war, where President Trump is already fed up from the war, but he cannot just stop threatening, using the language which is unparliamentary and using the words which actually are inflaming the situation instead of like they say, soothing the fire, the wounds. No. So here we are in a situation. Iran and Iranians has been through this before. In 1980s, they used from Iraq the Kurdish people and some Iraqi forces to capture part of Iran for years, and America supplied every kind of weapon to those forces, and still they could not gain even a single inch from Iran. So that is one thing. So what is happening with Iran is now Iranians actually control the Hormuz channel. Whatever goes through from Hormuz, they control it. And they actually are not letting any ships to pass through. And because of that, the oil prices already jumped. But interestingly, I was reading yesterday that how the kerosene and high octane petroleum which is used for the airplanes, that is produced in that part of the world. It is by the refineries over there, and that is in short supply also. Interceptors which are used by the U.S., that's another in short supply, because Iranians actually knew how to technically fight this war. And also there was a place in Iran where the president declared on the TV that we have bombed that site 45 times. Guess what? A couple of hours later, the missiles were being fired from the same site to different, which actually shows that, which I spoke and talked about in my previous show, that Iranians were getting ready for this fight for last almost 50 years, since 1978. It's 48 years. So they knew that one day they will have to face United States. Now, question comes in that how Trump fell into it. It's not that he fell into it. It is his bravado that I can do this, I am this, I have this strongest military in the world. That's why instead of Department of Defense is not Department of War. Okay? And all of a sudden, now he is feeling the limitations. Because he is feeling the limitations, he still does not stop lying to the public. And I pity those people who literally trust him that what he is saying is right, and he knows what he's doing. I really do, because he does not, or he is good at the way he has always been his life, to bluff his way around, bluff his way out, and then declare himself as a winner. So Iranians still have their nuclear capabilities. They still have their missile capabilities. Yes, they don't have the Air Force, they don't have the Navy, because they knew that this is something which we cannot face. That their Navy was not meant for facing the Western countries or the United States. It was just for the local, countries who fall into that region of Mediterranean Sea. And Red Sea, Yemenis attacked one of the Saudi Arabia's refinery. So instead of containing the war is actually expanding, because there are other countries who have their own interests. So to expand this war, or not to let this war get over. Who has the interest in that? China has interest in that. Russia has interest in that. North Korea has interest in that. And these are the main countries. Okay? And China probably is waiting for appropriate time when China will take over Taiwan. They have been preparing for that for years. Okay? And I don't think US can do anything about it at the end of the day. The Trump will say, oh, well, it was part of their country, part of their territory. If they took it over, fine, they should learn how to live with it. That's it. End of story. And that is a trademark of Trump when it happens that. And also, let's not forget that why it could be one of the, sometimes I really laugh at all these things, that how you can create a bigger fire where your attention is to the bigger fire, not to the smaller fire. Epstein files, they were trying to hit home. There are people who committed suicide, there are people who are behind the bars, except a person who was on the right side of Epstein every time, the current president of the United States, Donald Trump. And that's why Mr. Blanche, who is the current Attorney General, he will not release those files. He did everything to not to release it. And, and it's a United States, to some extent still it is a country of law-abiding citizens where the laws are respected and people try to follow. But the laws are being broken at the top now, and that is actually emboldening the people on the lower level also, that if he can get away with it, why we cannot get away with it. And the courts are so much jammed with all these raids regarding the ICE and immigration that the judges are so much overwhelmed, which is again a strategy to slow down the whole court process for everything. Delay, 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 and justice delayed is justice denied, and that is the criteria which is being used by this administration to, and there have been instances where the judges actually ruled against the administration, but those are not being covered by the media, or those are not being discussed at all, or those are getting ignored. Again, the reason is because the message comes from the top. If the person sitting on the top refuses to accept the laws, they will follow that also. So going back to what is happening in Middle East, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, which is now known as Turkey, they have signed an agreement, joint agreement, defense agreement. You know, it is about, you know, keeping a deterrence, but honestly, at this point, I don't know who is trying to do what. Yes, Pakistan has the nuclear weapons, and because they have the nuclear weapons and the capability to deliver it, so are they trying to say that Saudi Arabia, we will be protecting you instead of United States, you pay us instead of paying to United States? It's a possibility, because instead of having United States there, US can say to Pakistan that, okay, you know what, we are pulling out from Saudi Arabia, and we want you to take care of that. Okay? So it means what? It means that now Pakistan is more close to United States for everything, which means what? Pakistan is close to China. Where those calculations are going to lead, that is something, you know, that's where it is called geopolitics, and geopolitics is always dirty, dirty, and dirty. Let's take a break. After the break, I will be right back. Welcome to Mainstream with Harpreet Singh Tour once again. Oh God, I'm trying to log into something here. Give me a moment. Okay, so I'm trying to get the information about this, you know, travel of President Trump from Turkey, this NATO conference, to where we are now. Okay, Iran actually threatened to, you know, take down the Air Force One, and apparently because of the, you know, CID and everything, you know, where all these spy agencies, they keep eye on each other and share the information, they actually found out that 747-8 donated by Qatar. I'm just reading some of the information from the laptop, so bear with me. So that was a target, so that the President Trump cannot travel in that. So Trump was made to board an older plane from left side door in view of the camera, and the news organization, including New York Times, because this is New York Times which is reporting, where actually from there he traveled on that plane which was donated by Qatar. Okay? And the reason was, again, like I mentioned before, why it takes so much time to, you know, have a plane for the President of the United States. It takes years. Why? Number one, the pace of technological advances is mind-boggling. Number two, the plane has to be equipped with everything, including when the plane is in flight, how to protect from the enemy fires and how to keep the president safe. Those are the requirements of the plane, which this Qatar plane does not have, even though it has this whole new presidential seal on it, but it does not have that, okay? And those modifications to protect the president. And the president was, like I said at the beginning of the show, he was made to travel at different places on different things, and he actually had to leave this beautiful plane, which he calls a beautiful behind, till he got on board in United Kingdom in England. And the two other presidents who actually traveled was President Bush and President Barack Obama. The reason was, again, the threat to their life. And why President Trump is getting threatened is because he eliminated the top tier of the Iranian government, whether on behest of Bibi Netanyahu, as it is being reported, or he himself was like, I can just go and eliminate everybody, like he mentioned that you will see a big red ball, which means an atomic bomb being thrown on Iran. In other words, so definitely they want a revenge. Okay, when Soleimani was assassinated by President Trump in his first presidency, Iranians were still that, okay, you know what? Okay, you did it. We will do something, but not much, because even though we don't like it, but we do not want to escalate the war. Okay. So it was taken as a weakness by this president for the Iran. But Iranians knew that what they have and where they can fight and how much they can fight. And that's why, they did not escalate at that time. But this time, when US and Israel attacked collectively to Iran, it was literally an aggression on another country without any provocation. And now Iran has to defend itself, and that's what it is doing. The sad part is, in this country, nobody is discussing the issues why the situation is where it is. Why? Because, again, it goes down to, like I mentioned, you muzzle the media, you keep the information under the carpet, people will not know about it, and you can do whatever you want to do, and by the time people find out down the road 15, 20 years or 30 years, you're dead, you're gone, And that's where actually the history comes into the play. So that's why he had to do that he had to switch all these planes and everything. And also, not only that, he also is planning to do same thing in Cuba. Okay? He's not satisfied with, creating already so many destabilizations in the world, but in the meantime, he's giving a free hand to Putin, because in 2022, Putin invaded Ukraine, and everybody was like, within 3-4 days, Ukraine will fall, but it has not fallen yet. Okay? So this is where everything gets blurry, muzzled. Nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows what is going to happen. US was supposed to be a part of NATO, like, ironclad ally. Trump has proved that it is not. Now NATO countries are trying to figure out how they can buy that time to create their own defenses against all these aggressions if it might happen, and also about the energy supply, the power supply, because everything is energy intensive, like we are using AI. Look at what these AIs are actually so much hungry for the power. It's unbelievable. And the water. And that's why some of the parts within the United States, they are resisting that, they don't want that anymore. And also the other things which are happening, which happened actually after my last show, this is interesting, which I totally forgot to mention in the beginning. I'm going to talk about that now. After I finish these thoughts, that all these instability in the world can create a bigger catastrophe, which we may not be able to handle at all. And we may end up at another low intensity world war, or maybe high intensity world war, who knows? Because then we have also Elon Musk as a big poker player. Okay? Now, I'm coming to this, which I told you I did not talk about. L.I.C's victory in Michigan to be the senator of Michigan State, a Muslim senator. What are the issues? Okay. Number one, he's not a socialist candidate, but Republicans are trying to depict him as a socialist candidate. But for me, there is something which is more serious, and that is they are actually calling him with his faith as a Muslim. And we know what happened after 9/11 to us, to the Sikhs in the United States. And I'm afraid that with this rhetoric about Al-Said, we may end up again defending ourselves and, trying to explain to the people about our faith. This is why that the freedom of speech is so important, but at the same time, that freedom of speech needs to be countered by correct narratives. When during his first term, President Trump said that there are alternative truths. There are no alternative truth. There is a truth and there is falsehood. Al-Said won by sheer determination and his footwork. He was outspent $90 to $1 by his opponent who lost. And his opponent, she said, "We are Democrat big tent party." She accepted her defeat. But Republicans do not want that the other public, the general public, to buy that, believe that. And you know what? With this Al-Said's election to be the nominee for the U.S. Senate, I don't know if he will win or not the Michigan Senate seat, but one thing is for sure. The Republicans will now have more seats in the House, or losing less number of seats which they were expecting to lose before he became the candidate. And also, nobody's talking about the inflation. Nobody talking about the, the families being separated by ICE. Everything now, from now onward, is going to be election. Come September, the whole thing is going to be blanketed by all these advertisements and everything. And not only Al-Said, but Mayor Mamdani of New York City, being a Muslim also, that also gives the fodder to Republicans to talk about it, but also because he is a Democrat Socialist of America, even though they belong to Democratic Party, but they are extreme left. But nobody will talk about it, that he tried to hire 538 more police officers. Remember DSA in 2018 and 20s, they were talking about, excuse me, defund the blue. Here is the guy who at that time was saying defund the blue, but he wanted to hire more cops to keep the New York City safe. Even though at the last moment he was, he stopped short of hiring them because his supporters were totally against it. So he balanced out that, okay, if I do this, I will be able to do that. So what I'm saying is, we as a community, Sikhs in particular, we need to be very careful about what is going to come up. And we need to be more actively supportive of everything which is normal, which is sensible. We should not be reacting to anything, because if we react, we are the losers. I know it is easier said than done, but yes, it is important that we do not react to these things. It is very, very much important. And also, we will have, Max Miller in Ohio, the Democrat, not a Democrat, the Republican elected. He has an issue, domestic violence issue. Then also, before I go, there is one more thing which I want to say. U.S. fired on a ship on blockade in Iran, and this is the last thing which I want to share with you, that Iran has decided to take a new hard line against the Trump administration at this point, and that is not a good signal, at least in the short run. So with that note, having said that, it's for today, even though there were some things which I wanted to talk about, some other things I couldn't, but we'll talk in the next show. So till next time, good night and good luck.